It starts with a fresh shot of espresso. Bold, rich, pulled just right. Then comes the milk, steamed smooth, creamy, and balanced. The perfect latte is not rushed. It is crafted, one cup at a time. Your perfect latte is ready. Coffee first, then everything else.
Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm DJ Moises and today's conversation is brought to us by Coffee First. The Philippines has recently achieved upper middle income status. The president has proposed tax reforms. Inflation remains a concern. Economic growth has slowed. But for most Filipinos, the real question is much simpler. Will life become more affordable? Will my salary go further? Will my family have a better future? This afternoon, we look deeper and think better with a distinguished banking and project finance consultant and a faculty member at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business, Professor Tony Jacinto. Hello, Prof. Tony. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Hi, good afternoon, DJ. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Yes, we're also grateful to have you here because we will dive deeper into some buzzwords that we've been hearing this year, no? And even before that, but I think more this year. So let's start with the World Bank officially classifying the Philippines as an upper middle income economy after our threshold actually breached, exceeded the threshold that was set by the World Bank. And by the way, the threshold I am referring to is the gross national income per capita. And this is the
That's
first
right.
time that the country, after nearly 4 decades, has been languishing in the lower middle income economy. So, Prof, can you walk us through with this and what does this mean to the everyday Filipino?
Okay, thank you, DJ. I think we should, for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners, we should first examine the components of what we mean when we talk about gross national income. So, gross national income is just an expanded definition of gross domestic product. And gross domestic product is the composition of household consumption, government spending, and business capital formation. So, when you get these three components and add the exports less the imports, then you come up with the GDP formula. And then you add to that the primary income, and you come up with the gross national income. So the gross national income, when you divide that by the population, that's what you call the gross national income per capita. So that's the basis of what was used by the World Bank. The gross national income divided by the number of individuals in the country, that's going to come up with the GNI per capita. And that's the basis. And then they use an exchange rate based on what the World Bank calls the Atlas method. So that's it's a method of smoothing out 3 years average foreign exchange. So when you come up with that number is used now as a basis into falling into one of the 4 general categories of the World Bank. So there are 4 categories of the World Bank in terms of income. So one is the low income threshold. Then there's the lower middle income threshold. And then the third one is the upper middle income threshold. And the fourth highest one is the high income threshold. Now it's between the second and the third wherein the Philippines moved from the lower middle income to the upper middle income threshold. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we reached that finally. We hit that the lower end of the threshold of the upper middle income category is $4,516. And we were able to finally hit that on a per capita basis. So that's something it is certainly an achievement, something for us to welcome. DJ, just to give you more and the viewers more information. The upper middle income category is quite wide. No, you hit the upper middle income from $4,516 to $14,000. It's a very wide range for the upper middle income portion. No? We were able to go from the lower middle income portion, which was less than 4,516, and finally hit the 4,516 plus. And we actually made it on the very low end. No? So when we say that we're upper middle income, we're actually bunched together with a whole wide category, huge number of countries, but we're at that lower end. So I think we should put that in context. No, we're on the lower end of the upper middle income, and then despite our having achieved this, there are still challenges that remain ahead. So I wanted to start this off by saying that yes, it's an achievement, but I also wanted to give the listeners and the audience an appreciation that of how the computation was derived. No? And once we know how the computation was derived, then we can go deeper into the discussion.
And so, Prof, given that, and thank you for clarifying, that it's the upper middle income bracket set by the World Bank is actually very wide, and the Philippines is just on the lower part of the bracket. So, is it safe to say that this is going to translate significantly on how everyday Filipinos would experience life in the Philippines?
Okay, that's really the next question. No? What does this mean for us? No? And since it's an average of a per capita, no? Does it mean that each household has improved? Okay, it's an aggregate divided by the population, so it's actually an average. No, it doesn't really speak it doesn't really get into the granularity of how households are individually affected. So one is it's just a general criteria of development, but does it give us a good picture of what the households are experiencing, or what about the income classes? No? Does it mean that the lower income classes have improved, or the middle income classes? It could mean that maybe the higher income bracket improved greatly enough to pull up the average. So the way to address this is economists have a measure called to measure the income disparity between the lowest income and the highest income group, and it's called the Gini coefficient. So when we look at the UMIC, we should look at it in context together with what we call the Gini coefficient. That's spelled Gini, coefficient. So we say, what's the Gini coefficient? The Gini coefficient is a good measure. It was developed by economists that is from 0 to 1. And the closer you are to 1, that means the greater the inequality. And the closer you are to 0, the greater the inequality. So where's the Philippines in this measure? Well, our measure, the latest measure per 2023, our Gini coefficient was 0.41. So we're 0.41. So what's the context of that? Our Gini coefficient was previously at 0.43 and became 0.41 over 3-4 years. No? So we improved slightly by 0.02. No? So you want to drive that down much, much more, no? Because it's saying we did hit UMIC, but it should be, did the income disparity improve? And actually it basically just slightly improved. No? So that's what I refer to as the challenge. We have a challenge to help the growth, make sure that the growth is equitable. That's the challenge. So we grew as a country, but the question there is, did we grow together? Did all the income classes grow together? And we want to, that can be examined by looking at what I refer to, the economists refer to as the Gini coefficient or GINI coefficient, and there is a measure of that. Although it's measured periodically, it's not annual because it is difficult to measure. No? Main challenge there is the growth equitable? No? So going back to your question, what does it mean for the Philippine household? One is we want to make sure that the growth moving forward is equitable as much as possible. That everyone grows equally and no one is left behind. See, so that's very important, and that's something the economic policy planners should always and do always take into consideration. That how do we make sure that we institute policies that are as much as possible equitable across all income classes. And we'll find out, I teach economics, and you find out in the course of discussions that it's more easily said than done, to have policies in place that create equitable distribution effects.
Well, hopefully after this conversation, Prof, it would generate more interest for students to actually have their MBAs, in schools like Ateneo Graduate School of Business. But that said, Prof, sige, so if we then, and I like actually the term that you use about, can you highlight equitable, no? Because if we go over the same bracket explanation earlier, you just mentioned that it may have been generated by this, and then it just spread to the lower side, but it does not necessarily represent whether that's an experience that spread across. So, taking from your response, Prof, about making it then felt by the many, I know there are possible hows to this, but I'll zero in on the quality of jobs that are available. Do you think this is also an area that our leaders and our economists would focus on, how to bring these people here to here through the quality of work that's available?
Okay. One is, again, thanks for that question, DJ. One of the key principles of economics is, again, is it fair? No, is the policy fair? And given that, the government is always always has the national wealth, should always have the national welfare in mind. And you talk about the quality of the jobs. Okay, that brings us to an important also question. When we talk about economic planning, one is the where do you use resources and what sectors do we develop? Okay, and that's actually again a key challenge, another key challenge facing the economy right now, because the Philippines is and the whole world is actually going through a technological transformation. So it's led by recently, it's sort of led by the AI, and we are in the Philippines, and we have a huge service sector. We have the BPOs, and we have a huge sector involved in a significant sector involved in agriculture. We have so much area devoted to agriculture, and we have so many. We are endowed with minerals. So these. When you're a planner, an economic planner for the government, you're faced with all these choices. And again, you have to sit down as a planner and think that given all these developments, you have the tech side, we have on the other hand, the strengths of the Philippines and the resources we have, minerals, we have the agriculture, we have the significant sector in agriculture. At the same time, we have the BPOs. One of our key strengths is the English-speaking population that we have. So these are actually all factors that have to be taken into consideration by the economic planners. And again, if you're going to ask the quality of jobs, the one is the planners have to really assess how to make the best use of technology as it's being developed, which is AI, and how can you meld that with our strengths, being in services, in BPO, in agriculture. So because AI and technology can also be used to vastly improve the output of agriculture. No? And so that's the challenge now that the government is facing. So my answer to that is it's really involves sitting down and really melding, taking advantage of technology at the same time, taking stock of what we have and finding out how to marry the two and move forward.
Now, among the jargons now that are being surfaced, although this is not exactly entirely new, but among the jargons that are being surfaced is the 4P now, the if as a Pantawid Pamilyang Filipino program, which is a conditional cash assistance once and for all, because it's generating mixed conversation, especially in social media now. Once and for all, do you believe, Prof, that 4P was also a significant or an effective ladder no, that has moved Filipinos from poverty?
Okay, when we talk about cash transfers, no, and definitely, it of course addresses an immediate need, no. There's when you talk, especially in the poverty level, and the statistics have it that the latest statistics show that we're at a 15% poverty level. No, that translates to a huge number of Filipinos who are in poverty. About 14 million. I believe it's 14 million Filipinos. No? So a huge number. No? When you talk about these similar programs, no? Of course it addresses an immediate liquidity need. No? And there's no question, we all see that there is really a problem. And that's also led to the growth of and that's why there's been this growth in the micro lending, no? In that space, that people are so tight on their daily needs that they unfortunately have to resort to these means of sustaining themselves, like the micro lending and or the informal side, which is the 5-6, no? Which we really want to get away from as much as possible. That would be ideally, if we would want to see a situation where there's no 5-6 around, and that everyone has access to more formal credit and credit on an interest rate which is more reasonable. No? So anyway, regarding that, it addresses the immediate need of the liquidity, but I think we have to think. The planners also have to think for the long term. That how do we help people help themselves? No? And this will now go down to the discussion on education. So education, because of education, people will be able to arm themselves and stock themselves with knowledge and make themselves now more valuable and be able to be more skilled and now be able to earn a wage. So in the short term, it certainly has a role, the cash transfer. But for the long haul, we have to think of a structural improvement and a strategic improvement, and that's going to be education. Education is key to getting the country out of this economic and you might even say the moral issues that we face now. If the education sector is able to play a key role in the development of the people's values, and people have obtained the necessary skills through education, then that's a great step forward for us.
Actually, education, employability, employment, these are actually portions now of the country's gap that are closest to me. But before we get into the prof, you mentioned something about kanang structure now. How about, do you think it makes sense? Or if it's already happening, you can also educate me. But do you think it makes better sense that instead of measuring the four P's success, for example, instead of measuring it according to the number of beneficiaries it served, do you think it's already about time that we also measure how many of these assistants actually resulted to a certain number of graduates or a certain number of people who have gained eventually better employment opportunities? And sige, and the context of that, Prof, it's because I see Manggod, and correct me if I'm wrong, the usual measures, Manggod, that I see with government is always the number. Like, for example, if we talk about Tesla, it's the number of people trained, but not necessarily of the number of people that they trained. How many of them actually have seized work opportunities, no? That has improved because they took the Tesla course. So I'm also using the same for 4Ps. Na, do you think it's about time that instead of, oh, we have a number of Filipinos who have availed with 4Ps, but of this number, how many of them actually have graduated or have been employed with better opportunities this time around?
Yeah, definitely. Uh, what you pointed out is absolutely correct. No, there must be a monitoring mechanism to see this, see how programs work out over the long haul. No? It would be, it would really, that is really the ultimate goal. What is the final, how people are finally placed. No? So definitely, what you pointed out is critical. That there must be a constant monitoring mechanism to see how the funds are deployed and the usage and how people are able to use these funds and finally get to graduate with these funds. So definitely, that's something that should definitely be given priority.
And now let's move towards, and before we move into education now, let's move towards another measure that more and more everyday Filipinos are getting interested, no, by the day. And I'm referring to, we covered a little bit of this earlier, I'm referring to GDP, no, GDP growth. And if my numbers here is still the accurate one, so it's slowed down, no, from 5.4% to 2.8%. If we compare it from the same period last year, and this is a slow growth, no, compared to the growth that we've seen in the past. Do you see this, Prof, as a temporary slowdown, or is this something that we will be seeing more and more in the months to come?
Okay. A very good question, and very relevant, no, for everyone. No? We always ask, one of the objectives of economics is to make sure that we're well informed of what's happening in society, and when we talk about economics, one of the key measures definitely is GDP, and I mentioned GDP earlier. No? When we talk about GDP of the Philippines, no, really. If you look at the GDP figures, the biggest driver of GDP in the economy is the consumer. The consumer comprises of 70% of GDP. The GDP has, again, the five components. No, as I mentioned earlier, one is the consumer spending. Second is the government. Third is the business spending. Then you add there the exports, and then you subtract the imports, and that comes up to your gross domestic product. No? And if of that figure of GDP that we have, no, and the last year it was 23 trillion pesos, no, 70% of that was derived from consumer spending. So when they say we're a consumer-driven economy, that's certainly true. 70% is driven by the consumer. Now, um, this year has been particularly challenging for everyone in the world, not just the Philippines. No? We have the Iran war. We have, of course, the most recently the tariffs. We have the challenges brought about by AI. No? And because of going back to the Iran war, because of the Iran war, that we have now elevated oil prices. No? So all very varying challenges and very significant challenges. No? And it did affect our GDP. It's now down to 2.8, as you mentioned. No? For the year, the government target is the government has always aimed for 5 to 7%. No? We're not going to attain that. No? If we go at this rate, we're probably going to hit less than 5%. So, but to be fair, no, the whole world is affected. Okay, but so these are the challenges we do face, and we really have to adjust accordingly. Even our exchange rate right now, like yesterday it was 61.41. The key interest rates of the central bank was at 4.75. So they just raised it by 50 basis points recently. So again, all these factors come into play, and these do present challenges for the year. Hopefully, if there's some resolution with respect to the Middle East, no, that will again help ease the economic stress, and perhaps we can get back to some form of more normal growth next year.
And Prof, if we then combine it with, because growth is slower, and this is not, as you mentioned, this is not just isolated for countries like the Philippines, but at the same time, we're also seeing a high inflation. I think the number that I have here is 6.4%. If we factor these two together, what's the experience of an everyday Filipino be like?
Oh, well, we all experience it, no, DJ, and definitely, the inflation is a key measure that must be addressed squarely by the government. If there's any measure that has affected voter outcomes, for example, no, it's really their how they live each from day to day, and that's really measured by inflation. And what is the key driver of inflation now? It's one of the key factors now are the oil prices. No? Transportation comprises 9% of the inflation rate, but it's really because of its it's just grown by over 10 to 20% over since the Iran war started. No? And that the Iran crisis started Feb 28. So we've had almost 3 months of high crude and variable oil prices. So if we're talking about what the consumer is experiencing, they experience it immediately in the pumps. No? With the elevated oil prices, we see a diesel before pre-Iran was at on the 60 peso level per liter, and now it's at the 90 peso level per liter. So that's one. And of course, when fuel prices go up, LPG prices go up. No? That then impacts cooking, transportation across the board. And so it definitely affects all of us in a very in an immediate way, in fact. So definitely inflation must be addressed. In fact, if you look at the BSP, the BSP's main goal is actually to watch the inflation. That's how important it is.
And now, with this actually brings us to another noise. No, no, not noise, but demand, rising demand. No, not necessarily noise. Rising demand for wage increase. No. To for because it's actually perceived no na this will help everyday Filipinos get through the challenges now that's brought about a slower economic growth and also higher prices. And I think in Metro Manila, it is the first tranche is already in effect. And even here in Cebu, there is a pressure, to increase the minimum wage. How does this truly help the a person, a Filipino, and the economy of the country in general?
Okay. Good question, DJ, and very relevant. To address inflation, one way the government would can address that is by a wage hike, no? And that has been the case with the recent hike in NCR, no? And it's in two tranches, no? One tranche this year and the next tranche next year, no? But in economics, no, there's always a trade-off. When you increase wages, okay, there are also other effects that we have to consider, and there are what we call the stakeholders. No? So one thing, it will benefit immediately of course the worker, and that's of course much needed and welcome. No? But you also have to now put on the hat of the firm, and if you're the firm, you now have an additional stress cost factor to consider, which is a hike in the wage, the daily wage. No, so that has to be factored in, and that was not, it was not probably factored in early this year. No? This was a very swift and probably it was done because of course there was a need. No, so. When we talk economics, we have to look at both the benefits as well as the costs. No? So one benefit is the workers are immediately, of course, their paycheck is improved. On the other side, we have to think of the firms and think of how that impacts the firms. No? So if you look at the firm side, the large firms are in actually a very good position to absorb this. No? So the listed firms are in a better position to absorb this rather than the smaller firms. No? I think the question now is, what's the impact on the MSME firm owners?
Which is majority, no? Which is the majority.
Which is the majority.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about that, no, and the MSME sector, no, they are the ones really struggling. We already talked about inflation earlier, no? And then now you have this wage hike. No? So their cost on the transportation has increased as a firm holder, no? As an owner of a company. And then now you have the increase in the wages as well. No? So as an MSME, these are costs that are quite significant. No? They are significant relative to the ability of a large firm to absorb this. If you're an MSME, it's much harder. And that's probably where there might be some net loss, and hopefully it's minimal, of people not being able to be retained because of this. No? So when we talk about what's the impact of the wage hike, no, we actually have to weigh the cost benefit, no? And the government planners, of course, are always hoping that perhaps it's always a hope that the MSME in this case will be able to absorb it. Because if somehow the whole economy is able to absorb this wage hike, no, then of course it's wonderful. Okay, but if we are going to look at the effects, no, there's probably going to be some firms, particularly on that side, the MSME, who probably have to make hard decisions as to whether they will continue to hire more. Maybe they were planning to expand and hire more. Maybe they will have to defer on that and maybe think twice about hiring more. So in that sense, there's also an impact on the ability to hire more, or maybe even a need to reevaluate and maybe not even be able to retain some people on that level. So that's hopefully across the board. Hopefully, it's a major net gain for across the board. So as I said earlier, hopefully no one gets left behind if this with this wage hike increase. Hopefully, everyone gets to move forward in it.
And by the way, Prof, correct me if I'm wrong, because I cannot exactly remember the percentage of MSMEs, no, in the Philippines, but I'm sure it's over 90%, no. And so, and I'm surfacing it, and then correct me if I'm wrong. It's because these MSMEs are also part of the everyday Filipinos, no,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Definitely. Yeah. Again, that's the challenge for the economic planners. No? There is inflation. There is the oil price hike. No? So everyone is feeling the brunt. And one of the tools is a wage hike. But the magnitude of the wage hike has to be considered. And again, it's usually large firms who are in a better position to absorb this rather than the MSME. So remains to be seen, DJ, if how this is taken on the MSME level. And the other measure that will bear that out would be the unemployment rate. No? So the planners also have to look at that carefully and see if the unemployment rate increases as a result of this, moving forward. So the looking at the data is very important as these policies are implemented.
And now, speaking of the employees, no, and in the part, this is the portion of the SONA in which people actually say this is for the lack of better word, pampalubag loob, because it is viewed to finally include the middle class into the priorities, but at the same time, it is also said to pacify, the campaign donors, and these are the MSMEs, no. And I'm talking about the increasing the tax-free income threshold from 250,000 to 350,000. Can you tell us also, Prof? I know this is way more complex to be covered in just this show, no? But at least, can you tell us also how this could also impact everyday Filipinos, at the same time the overall economy, because I've also heard some people citing the disadvantage also of doing this, but I leave it to you.
Okay, thanks, DJ. No, again, as we go through the discussion, you'll notice it's always a question of what are the benefits, but then you will realize, and we all realize, there are always costs. No,
correct,
and that's economics is all about trade-offs. No? So economics. When you look at the economics, it's really how to make best use of the resources you have on hand. That's why we say we economize. Okay, it's that simple. So we economize, and as a national government now, there is a consideration. There's always a consideration how to equitably handle the tax, and that proposal to probably increase the level of tax exemption. Again, that's always something worth considering. Perhaps if it's reviewed, and perhaps if we tax more heavily the upper end, then maybe that tax on the upper end can compensate for any net loss of the government that is attained, net loss in terms of taxes. Because when we decrease the taxes on any income level, you're giving up tax revenue. So the question is, how do you compensate for that? So if we give up tax revenue from the lowest segment, which is of course something noble and worth studying, always worth studying. But what is the appropriate threshold to help people at that level? And the question is, how do we recover that? Do we recover it by taxing the higher income or the largest firms? And that's possibly one angle that we should look at. So when we talk about giving a tax break on one side, the next, it's always a question of how can the government sustain its programs, because the effect of that is if you give up tax on one segment, then obviously programs of the government, some programs will now have to be affected unless that tax shortfall created by that tax break is now recovered by taxing other income groups or perhaps other tax means. So not necessarily the largest income groups. Maybe you can just have taxes on luxury goods, for example. So there are many ways of dealing with this. So to answer your question, it's always worth studying that, and I really, it should always be reviewed as to what's the appropriate taxable level and enable people who really need the money the most to retain as much money as possible. And that would be the lower classes. So the upper level can absorb more. So that's one side. Or the luxury goods or the vices, for example. The vices like tobacco or alcohol, maybe they can be taxed more. So again, these are just all options, but it's a question of being able to recover the revenues.
And speaking
sorry, if I may add, again, we always, to the extent possible, the planners, of course, want everyone the whole economy to move forward. So again, all these factors need to be taken into consideration.
And speaking of revenue that could be used to fund government programs, we'll now move finally to education. Employability. So, and if the viewers have followed this show for months already, they would be hearing me cite this stat every once in a while. I'm referring to the functional literacy of Filipinos, and it's actually at 70.8 . So that means we struggle with reading comprehension, but more than that, we also struggle with even following simple instruction like filling out a form. And yesterday, I've also cited where we stand in PISA, in which we are either second to the lowest or lowest in the world when it comes to reading, math, science, and creative thinking. That said, do you think we're ready for the AI economy, which you've mentioned in the earlier part of the interview?
Yeah, DJ, it's definitely alarming that the statistics that you've mentioned. It's something that the government should really, again, address squarely and put top priority on education. And we want to rise in the rankings. We don't even want, and to find out that there's been that our ranking has even been falling. Is, of course, definitely is alarming. So, are we ready for the AI boom or the challenge? And that's why there's a need to step up. And again, the resources that the government has to be then therefore be properly channeled into the courses and to skills that will enable the Philippine economy to take full advantage of all these changes. So the question is, are we ready for it? And the based on the statistics now, we probably need we have a lot of ground to cover before we're able to take advantage of this. So we need the government needs to really make it clear that education is a priority and help people be able to provide funding support for people to enroll in these necessary courses. So, if you take a survey of the top department of the departments that need to be funded, no? And I've taken surveys, no? Small surveys. No? I ask people, which departments do you think are the most important departments in the government that need to be funded? No? And that's relative to the given the scarce resources that the government has. No? We have the government of the Philippines has so many needs. No, is it defense? Is it infrastructure?
Education.
Is it so much? No,
So much, yeah.
yeah. And the surveys that I've conducted, number one is always education. The people said that they feel that the department that needs most attention, most resources relative to the others is education. That was interesting, and that's been the case when I take these surveys. I've taken it over the past 2 years. It's small surveys, no, but it's been consistent. Education's number one. No? So we can't emphasize that enough. And when we talk about education, it's not just about AI. No? Again, I mentioned earlier, when we talk about education, it's also about values. If we are able to, if we're able to talk about and inculcate moral values at a young level, then people will be able to discern as they grow up. They'll be able to discern and make choices based on good judgment, and then they will vote for the people who they feel are really most appropriate to lead the government. So education will address these issues.
And by the way, Prof, no, I'm because I'm down to my last few questions, no, but I'm really enjoying so much this conversation. I'm missing my economics classes at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. But before I let you go, let's talk about sibling comparison. And I'm talking about because the Philippines used to be the favorite ASEAN child, and arguably it's no longer the favorite as of the moment, and the new favorite is said to be Vietnam. No. Now, if we talk about manufacturing, for example, because it looks like they're also ahead of us now, so what are they doing differently that we can learn from? No, even if they're younger than us, but they seem to be already ahead of us.
Good, very good question, DJ. No? So, when we are where we are, no, we have to take it in. We have to compare ourselves and as compared to competitors, so to speak, no, or other countries. No, and you're right. No, Vietnam is one of those fast-growing entities. Their GDP has been in the top 1 or 2 in the ASEAN in terms of GDP growth. So one is when you look at Vietnam, one theme that comes up is that there is constancy, and that there is a program that is followed through and not changed at whim by administrations. So the constancy and stability of their programs really help. In the Philippines, we with every change of administration, there is always some significant change in priority, or maybe there's some new crisis that comes up. So in our case, we have not had that level of stability and consistency and purpose, that Vietnam has had, and so that bears fruit, and you also talked about education earlier, so there's also, maybe it's worth looking into as well, that what percentage of resources do they allocate for education, for example. So these are things that we really need to take stock of and ask ourselves, as you pointed out, not just with Vietnam, but just how do we maintain our competitiveness, and even go beyond that, make us really become the world-class players that we want to be. And we all know that we were at that level years ago. Now that we had the first airline, we were the leaders in rice technology. So it's really, we have that ability. It's just a question of our regaining that purpose, but as well as we really need that consistency. No? And if we are able to have that in place, and we have infrastructure growing consistently, we have a good education program in place. No? If we have that stability in place, and we grow consistently at 5-6%, no? 7% plus, then we're going to be back on track. Okay, so challenges, it's really challenges. And again, we're all going through the crisis right now, internally as well as externally. So, but the important thing is we have to really, the planners have to prioritize, and then we all have to put our heads together and work together. And then we'll get there.
And much as I would like to talk about agriculture, but it looks like we're running out of time. So that is one area that viewers should watch out now, because that's also something that I hope to cover more extensively. Hopefully, Prof, if you would indulge us in our next conversation. But
Definitely, sure.
Yeah, but before I let you go, if you can give, this sounds like a Mr. Universe question, no? But I mean this question, no? I think this will have significance to our viewers. No? If you have one piece of economic advice to every Filipino household, regardless of where they are in the income bracket, what would that advice be, Prof?
The economic advice, well, when we make economic choices, we always want to think of, again, what is best for ourselves and for the country. And again, we want to make sure, as I said, that when we talk about the economy, for example, we want to make sure that no one's left behind. And so when we all make those small decisions of what's good for ourselves, how do we improve ourselves? No? And I guess that's maybe the key message I would have. No? If we are able to improve ourselves, no? By the simple way of, again, going back to education, or by being more efficient, for example. No? These are, when we do our small things in our small way, no? And you aggregate all that together, 112 million Filipinos improving themselves in their own small way, and you aggregate all that actually adds up to a lot. No? So my message is continue to look for ways to improve yourself. No? Find ways to, by all means, go for your education. Stay hopeful. Do your part. And if we all do our part, no? When you aggregate all that, it can actually result in more meaningful progress for us. So that's it. Improve yourselves, stay positive, and we'll get closer to where we want to go.
Well, as they say, Prof, Anthony, we are the change we want to see.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Prof. Tony. I'm enjoying this conversation so much. And thank you for making time to share your expertise now, so that more and more everyday Filipinos like me would be able to understand our economy and how we can participate in making our economy and our country better.
Of course. Thank you very much, DJ. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. So that's Professor Tony Jacinto. Now he's a distinguished banking and project finance consultant and professor at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. And just in case this conversation have made more people who are watching to explore the possibility of taking your MBAs, then Ateneo Graduate School of Business actually has a campus here in Cebu, and you have an option to take the Regis program for senior leaders and the standard program, no, for those who are on their way, no, to move up the ladder in whether it's in their own business or whether it's in the organization that they are part of. So the economy is often discussed in percentages, charts, and forecasts. But for most Filipinos, the economy is much more personal. Behind every GDP report is a family. Behind every inflation figure is a grocery receipt. Behind every employment statistic is a person searching for opportunity. Look deeper. Think better, because headlines tell us what happens or what happened. Understanding it tells us why it matters. So I'm DJ Moises, and thank you to Coffee First for supporting conversations that matter. This has been Beyond the Headlines. Have a good afternoon.
It starts with a fresh shot of espresso. Bold, rich, pulled just right. Then comes the milk, steamed smooth, creamy, and balanced. The perfect latte is not rushed. It is crafted, one cup at a time. Your perfect latte is ready. Coffee first, then everything else.